Hello, everyone. Chester here, and welcome to Bugbear's Basement. And let's see who we have with us today. Once again, Beowulf, how are you today?
I'm doing great, thanks, mate. Yourself?
I am doing well. It's a nice sunny day outside. I got a cup of coffee, and I'm sitting with a bunch of friends, so I think I'm doing well. We also have a new fan guest, everyone. His name is Alec. How you doing, Alec?
Doing great. Thanks again for having me, Chester.
Oh, no problem. And once again, everybody, ignore the Bethany. It's not Bethany. It is Alec.
It is
Uh,
Alex.
it is. And Booster, how you doing today, man?
Oh, I'm just wonderful. Thank you very much.
All right. And how is it over in New Zealand? Is it better than Australia?
All the time, mate. All the time. It's nice and sunny here. It's lovely, and there aren't too many Aussies here.
Yeah, but you have lots of crocodiles, don't you?
No, again, that's Australia. We have no crocodiles in New Zealand. We are
Really?
crocodile free.
Well, that seems sad in some way.
No, we
Okay.
are deadly animal free. In fact,
Oh, really? Well, that's really nice.
I
Goodness.
wouldn't call
Yeah.
those like miniature horses you guys call boars that like friendly.
yeah. Well, we don't see those often, to be honest. But they're not that friendly.
No,
No.
they just have earthquakes. Mainly earthquakes is their problem.
Too soon.
Okay. And Denali, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Just playing around with what I have here.
Okay, we don't need to talk about that. You can keep that to yourself. And of course, we have someone else that's on here with us that we've had on a other show. We're really glad to have him with us today. Dr. Wright, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you for asking.
All right. Well, now today, guys, we're doing something a little bit different. We did try to use the Streamlabs to launch, and I will go back and figure out how to do that because that is much cooler. What we were doing with that, and next few minutes we'll see more and more. Yeah, they're starting to come back in here, so good. Now we're very comfortable with using this right here, so everything else from here on should be smooth. But today we're doing on Bugbear's Basement, we're doing a little bit different. We're going to be talking about Kraven the Hunter, and we're going to talk about what his most famous comic book run is. That six-part series in the various Spider-Man comic books called Kraven's Last Hunt. Now, in that, for me personally, I'll just get it up front and out of the way. That is my actual favorite run of all time. Yes, I know it's not Secret Wars or Crisis or whatever the various ones that are most popular. For me, Kraven's Last Hunt is my favorite comic book run. So we're going to be talking about that, and we're going to be giving our opinion not only on the comic book itself, but on Kraven. And is he overrated or underrated? Now, we're going to have some people give you some information on Kraven here in a second, but as he sits right now, he is the 53rd most popular villain in comic books. That's the number. So we're going to be looking at that. Is that number too low or is that number too high? So Kraven. As we go to start off here is let's have each of our guests give us an opinion on Kraven just from the start before we even get into the comic. So Beowulf, why don't you go ahead and tell us what do you think about this Kraven character?
Okay, so this is interesting because I'm actually really new to this run. I'd never read Kraven's Last Hunt before until 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when you guys first mentioned it, and I read it. Before reading Kraven's Last Hunt, I thought he was highly overrated. Now, possibly a little underrated.
Interesting. Interesting. All right. Well, let's go to our next guest here. Now, Alec, I'm sure you've read this character. You have some understanding of Kraven. So just give us an opinion on Kraven himself.
Sure. I like that they gave him kind of a Russian background, made him son of a Russian noble. They tried to flesh him out so he wasn't just a jungle guy. But I think as a child I didn't quite appreciate what he was till I was older, and I like him more now, especially after reading Kraven's Hunt, where he's really been fleshed out, and you've got some sympathy for him, which I didn't find him altogether too sympathetic before.
Interesting. The whole Russian thing was interesting because when I was younger in the 80s, there was a role-playing game that was called Marvel Superheroes, and it was a
Yeah,
tabletop. Yeah,
had that.
you had that. All right,
Yeah.
awesome. Then when in that there was these great books. They came out A to Z with a write-up on pretty much every character it was in Marvel at the time, and it was in there that they introduced him as being Russian. And it just stuck from there on. It was kind of interesting how it got introduced. It's actually not introduced in the comics, guys. It actually comes out of that role playing game. So
I didn't
interesting
know that.
little fun fact. All right, thank you. So Booster, what do you think about Kraven the Hunter?
Kraven the Hunter. I'm not gonna lie to you, Chester. I know very little about Kraven, and I have read Kraven's Last Hunt, and I still don't really understand what's going on in here. I'm just flicking through it now just to have a bit of a refresher.
Okay, well,
So
that's fine. That's fine. Just
yeah,
follow our lead and give ideas as you go along. So
of course.
Denali, I know that you understand Kraven quite well. So why don't you give us just your general ideas or opinions on him on the outset here?
Yeah, when they first introduced him, he was giving a callback to that short story, the hunter from the most dangerous animal in the world, and that's where the inspiration came from. But now the most dangerous prey is Spider-Man. So it was kind of like the villain of the week when he was first introduced. So there wasn't really much to him. Just hey, he's a guy trying to hunt Spider-Man. Just another villain that you know Spider-Man had to defeat over and over again. And with this story, this is one of the core pillars of what kind of makes Kraven psyche known. It humanized him, which before his previous introduction, there wasn't really much of a humanizing element.
That's true.
Uh,
That's true.
and my first experience with Kraven the Hunter was actually through Spider-Man the Animated Series back in the 90s. And they were really basing Kraven not from the comic, well, from the comic book, but specifically from this story when they introduced them. So they knew that they wanted to tell this story, but I don't think they never got to truly do it. But they got the ethos and everything that was human about Kraven in from this story into it. So I knew how good he was, and kind of like a disappointment when I saw reading the earlier comics where he was kind of two dimensional. And then when I came across this one and some of the other better Kraven story, then I saw, okay, they're picking the very best stories of Kraven to put their foot forward in the animated series.
All right. No, excellent. So you were introduced to him after, then you came back to him with his stuff in the past. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, Dr. Wright, you're on Bugbear's Basement, sir, and we are talking Kraven the Hunter. So give us your thoughts.
There's a lot to unpack about Kraven. Obviously, it comes from, I believe it's a Collier story in 1924, The Hounds of Zaroff is the impetus of him, written by a guy named Richard Connell or Connell. And basically, it was about this guy going into Africa, and he's hunted all the greatest beasts in the world, and so then he has no other challenge, and he has to find one. So then, what does he hunt? He hunts man. But in this case, we had to, kick it up a notch, and go hunting superheroes. But the impetus is still there, the idea is still there, and then just the basic concept of man being the greatest, being like the most dangerous game.
Yeah.
And in this case, the superheroes being the most dangerous game, because what is like, and that's really what it comes down to. That's what this story really breaks down to, is man.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that is the cool thing about Kraven is he is hunting superpowered people. That's his thing. And we're going to get into why and all his psychology of the guy. But I think it's interesting. First, we're going to jump into that comic here real shortly. But I want to go ahead and put up some images here. We're going to take a look at it real quick. Now, of course, we have the classic image here of Kraven from the Kraven's Last Hunt, which we're going to be talking about today. Uh, this is a great image that I remember when I was a kid reading it. I love that vest that he wears, that lined vest. But I put up together a bunch of images as well, just to kind of show off Kraven in his various different incarnations. Here in the middle is his daughter Anna, actually, which I'm sure we'll get to later. But now there's some images here, guys, and you see if you can help me out with this. We have this one up here in the upper left hand corner. I am not familiar with it at all. Do you guys know where that's from?
Never seen it.
No, not sure. It looks like he's wearing the red Spider-Man suit. I have no idea.
Ben Riley's
Ben-
costume.
Yeah,
the
Ben Riley.
the Scarlet Spider costume.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Pope Psylocke, which wonderful. Now there's a Pope Psylocke. That's just amazing. Superior Spider-Man is a bit of a ripoff of some elements of Kraven's Last Hunt. Yeah, I've
I was
heard
just
that
thinking
before.
that as I was looking through.
Yeah. Now, we also have a Lego, which is good, but that's pretty standard Kraven, actually. I remember this one, this image of Kraven up here in the upper left-hand corner. Is this the one you were talking about, Denali, where you saw in the animated series?
No, it was actually from earlier than that, the 90s anime series.
I see. Is it the one below then? Because the one below is scary. I don't think I like it.
That looks like
No,
from something
no.
really recent, like
Yeah, those are
Marvel Rising or
recent.
something.
Let me find the image and then I'll share that one.
Yeah.
So you
Right. The
guys
one
see.
in the top right, I would say looks like it's from Spectacular Spider-Man, which a lot of people say is one of the best Spider-Man shows.
Well,
Yeah.
the art was amazing. Look at it. That's a great picture. That's a great
Yeah.
picture. All right. Well, what we're going to do now is we're going to go and we're going to take a look at Kraven and give some information on him. Just general topic stuff. But Kraven's name is Sergei Kravenov, and he is Russian. Like we mentioned before, that actually came out of a role-playing game. They decided to do that. But he also he has a half brother, Dmitry Smerdyakov, which is the chameleon, of course, in Marvel Comics. And like I said, he is the 53rd most popular villain of all time. Now, he's mainly known for being in Spider-Man comic books. And the Spider-Man comic book we're going to be talking about, it's actually several Spider-Man comic books with the Kraven's Last Stand. But this story was created by J.M. DeMatteis, Mike Zeck, and Bob McLeod. Those are the people involved in creating this amazing six-part series. But of course, originally, Kraven was created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. Now, this is interesting because it's not Kirby, right? It's Steve Ditko. Doctor Strange, of course, original Spider-Man. So it's neat to see another character that Ditko was involved in bringing to us. Now, did anybody ever read the original stuff of Kraven in those early Spider-Man comics?
Long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually went back and read the Kraven's very first appearance again, and I found it just having read The Last Hunt. I found that I enjoyed it a lot better the second time around. So.
Oh, okay. How about you
Yeah.
other guys? Yeah, give us some memories of Kraven comics, please.
I mean, I remember reading some of the Spider-Man with Kraven and the other comics with Kraven, but he was always just depicted as sort of like, what is it? I can't remember the name of the character anyway, but the guy that goes, white man that goes to Africa, English white man goes
Tarzan.
to Africa, not Tarzan.
No.
No?
That goes to Africa and like he
Quatermain?
can't die,
Alan
like the
Quatermain?
spirits. That's it, Quatermain.
Yeah.
And I was kind of depicting him as just like a Quatermain that came back and just decided to run around in a loincloth and a lion suit and have fun. But this story definitely gives him a lot more gravitas, and it does. If you read this and then you go back, it's almost serene.
It is actually, and
Yeah.
that's why I'm asking, because seeing earlier Craven stuff and then seeing the Last Hunt, I think is important. It gives you a true understanding of the character. I mean, this character, his story is kind of interesting, and I think a lot of people don't know. Craven is actually one of the from the aristocratic families that escaped during the Bolshevik revolution during the Russian Revolution, and his family's actually connected to the Romanovs. So Kraven is actually very, very old, and he uses a lot of herbal alchemic magic that he learned in Africa because he came to America. Their family escaped to America, and he was very disillusioned with America. So when he was a little bit older, he kind of went over to Africa to find himself, and while there is where Kraven became what he is. So it's kind of interesting. This is a character that is not just some, normal guy. He actually there's some mysticism to him. He's not an immortal, but he certainly has longevity because of his magic and stuff. So he's a little more deep. He's a little deeper, I think, than most people realize.
Yeah, and it's this book and this storyline that actually allow us to get insight into what Craven's is looking for, whereas his original appearance beforehand, and I do have the image of what I'm talking about if you want to screen share that, Chester.
Yeah, I'm showing it right now. Yes.
Is that before he was just hunting for sports. There was no reasoning. There was just, I'm just a hunter. I need to show the best. You are the prey kind of deal. With Kraven the Hunter, you get the reason, the why of why he's wanting to hunt, what he's looking for, what these hunts actually mean for him. From a beyond a superficial level, where his appearance beforehand wasn't showing that much.
No, that's true. This is an important comic. So since we keep talking about the comic, let's just go ahead and put it up and show it. So Denali, why don't you go ahead and share that?
Okay, just
And
give me a moment.
no problem. And what we're going to do here is we're going to have the first part of the first comic, which I believe is the Web of Spider-Man comic. I'm pretty sure, if I'm correct. But what we're going to have to do is we're going to have our very own Beowulf is going to read the first part of the comic book where we're introduced to Kraven in the book, and he's of course we're going to get that beautiful Australian accent, which I think might help feel kind of like a Russian talking, maybe a little bit. I'm not sure.
I can't do a Russian accent, so no.
No, that's all right. It's just foreign. It's good enough. All right, so Denali's going to be bringing that up, and as soon as you're ready, just go ahead and screen share that, and I'll plug it on you, dude.
Okay, will do. Just give
All
me a
right.
second.
So let me come over here to chat and see how they're doing over here. We got Mighty Geek Studios. We're talking about a man who has shown the Black Panther that his skills are flawed. Ooh, yes, he has. Kraven is an amazing fighter. He's actually extremely skilled. And you'll see as we talk about this comic, he is incredibly capable. Psylocke, we talked about that, ripping it off. Yeah, okay, guys. So Kraven's Last Hunt is my favorite Spidey story. Yes, it is, Derek. I agree. It's my favorite as well. It's actually, like I said, one of my favorite comic series of all time. And if you guys have any more questions other than Jordan saying bloody Aussies, which Jordan is from New Zealand, if you guys didn't know. All right. So as Denali brings that up, guys, now Alec, your first time joining us here on Bugbear's Basement or anything to do with the fan speak stuff. So how did you see what we're doing? What got you interested to want to come on and join us?
I love the comics, especially Spider-Man's been a favorite of mine since my father introduced him to me back in the early 70s. He got me some of Stan Lee and Steve Ditko's reprints, and I was hooked.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. Yeah, it's similar to me. When I was a kid, I think in 1975 or 1976, maybe, I was with my grandmother and there was we were in like a convenience store slash pharmacy type of thing, and of course they had those old spinner racks, you know,
Yeah.
and I was just staring at them, and my grandmother said, "Would you like one?" And I said, "Could I?" She said, "You can have one." So I chose one, and I can't remember the name. I think it was Adventures into Mystery or something like that. But it had this cool guy in like a red costume swinging on the cover, and of course it was Daredevil. So that was my very first comic ever. Was a Daredevil comic. It wasn't Daredevil comic. It was a, like I said, I think Adventures in Mystery or something like that. I can't remember the name of it.
The first comic book I bought for myself was Doctor Fate issue 1.
Really? Well, the first one I bought for myself was much later. I don't even remember that. But now you bought that off the stands, actually.
I bought that at a comic book shop. I had the first comic books I ever purchased were I got a video on my YouTube channel about it. Is that I went to a gas station with my grandfather, who was this like ex-army paratrooper, big tough dude, redneck, grizzled, all that kind of stuff. And he bought me the comics and said it was cool when all the kids were making fun of it, because I was kind of a geek. So that was, the first moment that I had where somebody like that said it's okay.
No, that's cool, man.
That's
That's a
cool.
good memory.
So I have the screen up.
I do. I see you are ready with that. Can you
Excellent.
expand that a little bit so Beowulf's poor eyes will be able to handle it? There you go.
What I might do is read off my own copy, and
All right,
then
that's
Alec can
fine.
just
That's
follow
fine.
along.
That's
Okay.
fine. All right, guys. Now, before we get into this, real quick, just do us a favor, and of course, hit that like button and hit this and subscribe, of course. But actually, the most useful thing to do for us right now is actually you go down the bottom of the screen and there's a little share button. And if you click on that share button, you can share this out to Twitter, Facebook, Google Plus, whatever your various things are, and go ahead and share that out so we can get more and more people in here to join us and have fun with this talk about Kraven and Kraven's Last Hunt. All right, Beowulf, let them have it, man.
All right. I am Kraven, the beast. My mind is rage and glory. My heart is fire and pride. My body is grace and power. I am Kravinoff, the man. An old man now, though few would believe it. Just a child when my parents came to this country, shortly after the overthrow of the Tsar, some 70-odd years ago. There was no more room in Russia for aristocrats, for culture, for honor, for human dignity. But all those things were bred in my bones, long before the Trotskys and Lenins dragged my homeland into the pit. Dignity? Honor? Where are such qualities today? All the world, it seems, has followed Russia's sad example. Were my parents alive today, they would look upon this frightened, wounded animal called civilization without recognition and with great fear and great disgust. I am Kraven, the hunter. I have found dignity not in the cities, but in the jungles. I have found honor not in the civilized, but in the primal. I have found morality. I have found meaning in the hunt. But I cannot escape time forever. Herbs and roots and potions cannot rejuvenate a dying spirit, or heal a heart crushed by the weight of a corrupted age. I will die soon. I must die soon. But not yet. And there we go.
Right. There we go.
Great.
That was very good. Let's clap for that.
Yeah.
Claps for that. Yes.
Clap, 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 clap.
Lots of
It was
clapping. Everybody clap. No, that was actually awesome, dude.
Yeah, it really was.
That-
It was good.
It
It was great to hear that.
Yeah, perfect. And of course, this gives you a great introduction to Kraven. I mean, what a wonderful way to start off the book. Yeah, just give your thoughts on that first introduction to Kraven, guys. Go ahead, Alec. Tell us what you think about that.
I just get part of me just feels actually bad for Kraven because to me, he's always come across as kind of psychologically damaged, because he's come from such noble roots, but yet he can't conquer the one thing that he's been unable to conquer, and that's Spider-Man.
Hmm. Wow. There you go. Interesting. All right, Booster, you've been reading and trying to catch up. Just tell us exactly what level of coolness was Beowulf's reading?
Oh, it was all right for an Aussie, I guess.
Oh, goodness gracious.
And it's
Where's the
far
love?
manlier than I could do anyway. And also, it's interesting to see Kraven was running around naked well before Bruce Wayne.
True. True.
And
But they
dude, he
had-
punches a gorilla's head off. Was I the only one who was like, dude?
No, he does, yes.
I mean, was that necessary?
And he fought Black Panther.
Yeah. Well, remember that when Kraven came out with Disco and Spidey, later we saw very shortly after that, we showed the introduction of Black Panther in Jungle Comics, was it called? I think Jungle Comics. And there was certainly a lot of, energy coming out of that. And I have a feeling their decision to create this Kraven character and the Jungle Comics was absolutely related. I don't know the history on that. Maybe someone here does. But that obviously there's connection. But go ahead, Danelli. What do you think about that opening bit here, introducing Kraven?
It humanizes him that before, you weren't able to see. You feel the weight of what he's been through. That he's always been in the run. Both as a prey and as the predator. He starts with, I'm an old man, and he begins with a child. I'm a child who lost things, and then I left to hunt things. So everything is circular. I am trying to hunt for what I believe in. What the principle? What is the honorable thing? What is the human dignity thing? That his family has lost, displaced. He's a man without a world, and the world is there, hunting him, so he hunts it back.
Yeah, that's interesting. Certainly, there's some insight they're giving us there into the character. And now, Dr. Wright, I think that was a very beautifully written and read. Thank you again, Beowulf. Look into the mind of Kraven. Why don't you go ahead and give us your thoughts on that opening salvo that they give us in this comic?
Sure. Hey, Denali, can you put up the picture of the first page again?
Sure.
And I'll tell you why. Okay, now I want you to look at what he's doing. This is a pose that Spider-Man has done many times. He's posing like Spider-Man. Look what he's surrounded by gas and vapors and old trophies. And then what does he do the moment he moves? Go to the next page, please. If you look at him, then he's not like Spider-Man anymore. He's like a beast. He is like the creatures he's facing. He meets the panther like the panther. He meets the gorilla like the gorilla. What is he doing? He's killing his past. He's killing the trophies of his past.
Yeah. And by the way, that is not a living gorilla. That is just a standing thing.
Exactly. It's taxidermy.
Not nearly as cool as I thought it was then.
And so, and then he leaves this and he goes into a place of education and opulence. And he's wandering through, he grabs a robe, he's no longer naked. He's clothing himself as a man, drinking of man's grape juice, and then begins to talk about his family and himself. Because he is a man now, he's no longer a beast. And he says that my spirit is old. His spirit has lived past its usefulness. And he sees the world and he doesn't belong in it. And I want to just ponder about that and think about like the situation we're currently in with like Comicsgate and everything, and the kind of progressive sort of almost Marxism that we're railing against. And what is he saying? He's like, the nations are following Russia's sad example of communism.
It's true.
And he's going into this and he's saying, they were weak. They weren't strong enough to fight back. And that's why his parents left. That's why they didn't want to be run by the country, by other people. They wanted to run themselves. And so there's so much to unpack in just these first 3 to 5 pages.
It is.
And that is why it is timeless. Because even today, like it was a decade after it's been written, it is still poignant.
It is, and this was written, of course, a long time ago, back in the '80s. And for me, I agree. When I first read this was when it first came out, and I was a high school kid, and actually high school, college, I guess, around that age. And of course, I loved it. And as we're going to see, this comic book is not for kids. This is no way this is for kids. But it was shocking to me to see a comic, because I had never seen one up until that point that hit me as much as this one did. And I've read this many times over the years, of course, this 6-part series. But I read it again yesterday just to refresh myself for our talk here. And I have to say that every time I've read this over the decades, it always strikes me different and more, and even more poignantly. And reading it yesterday, I really saw something in it that maybe I didn't see the first time I read it. And that's a mark of a great comic book, when throughout your life it can be something new to you at every various age that you hit. And that's one of the things that we've been talking about over here, and as you mentioned, Dr. Wright, in Comicsgate, in this community, we want good stories. That's what we want. We don't care about your silly politics. If you want to do some interesting politics, that's fine. But we just want good stories. And there's nothing coming out today that compares anything to this series. Now, if you guys, you have all your favorite series or favorite books and stuff, and of course I know that, but we're not getting this today. And that's the problem. And that's what we've been going on and on about. No matter what they choose to try to make the conversation about, it doesn't change the fact that we want this and we want more of it. All right. Now, that was the introduction to Kraven. So why don't you go down and let's see the introduction to Spidey. Now, we're not going to read all 6 of these comics to you today, but we do want to show the introduction of each character that's in it. And there's 3, right? Well, 3.5 if you count Mary Jane. Now, who would like to be Spider-Man?
Come on, Booster. Let's see what you got.
It's the Oceanus
call that.
Battle.
Challenge.
All right. Before Booster start, I do want to point out, when to add on to Will's pointing out, as he's walking as a man, look at the emptiness that surrounds him. It's great. It's open, but there's nobody there. Nobody except for Spider-Man, that we find out later on when he pulls out the costume. But even then, it's like a hollow victory, because it's just the costume from that moment,
And he's shedding tears over it.
Exactly.
He is, yeah. And of course, he's a very old man here. I mean, he's 80, 90-year-old guy, even though he's in the peak of his peak of health. He's actually a very old guy, so he's had time to learn things and gain wisdom. But anyway, okay, I guess we're gonna have Oceanus Battle. So, Booster, are you ready? Are you gonna let that Aussie show you up, man?
Oh, I'm ready, son.
All right, son. Okay, thanks a lot, young man. Go ahead, man. It's all yours.
Joe Face is dead. Why should I care? He was just another street snitch, a 2-bit thug. Sometimes I'd pump him for information, and sometimes I'd put him away. And now he's dead. So why should I care? How many Joe Faces have I known over the years? Too many to count. They're not people. They're obstacles in my way, means to an end. And if they die, do I do the dialogue as well?
I'll do
Poor
that.
stupid sap.
Yeah, go ahead, Janelle. Yeah.
Why should I care?
Didn't leave money behind. Didn't leave no money, no family to speak of. We're all we had, Joey, and this is the best we could do. Clunk, clunk, clunk. We got up a collection for ya, Joey. Figure that the least we owe ya was a decent box and a piece of ground. And maybe someday somebody will do the same for us. Holy jeez, it's Spider-Man. Booster.
Oh yes, but they can't quite sit the name out of their mouths. Was it? Oh, get the name out of their mouths.
Mm-hmm.
They're too scared, running from someone who doesn't even exist. Joe, the face, was scared too. He used to shake when he'd see me. He used to run, just like they're running. There is no Spider-Man. He's a mask, a myth. Stop! I didn't come looking for trouble. A lie. Oh, sure, it'd be great if putting on a costume could miraculously change the man underneath. But it can't. I'm not Spider-Man. I'm just Peter Parker. I came to say goodbye. And I guess I don't care.
I guess I do care.
Oh, but I guess I do care. Oh, man, I'm messing it up. They'll never understand that. How could they? How could anybody?
Harry, no.
Sometimes I wish I could get into their heads, see myself the way they see me.
You killing? I'll nail that wall-crawling freak and my rep made in this town.
On second thought, maybe not. Don't even try. Good boy, Harry Skitter. Skitter off into the corner and hide. Wouldn't want to get too close to the wall-crawling freak, would you? Wouldn't want to find out he was as human as you are. A decent box and a piece of ground. It's fragile. Is scared of dying. That's what this all is about, isn't it? Yesterday, Ned leads. Today, Joe Face. Tomorrow, Aunt May, Mary Jane. Me? Funny. I'm out there facing death every day as Spider-Man. But I never really think about it. Guess I don't let myself. Yet so many people I love have died before their time. Uncle Ben, Captain Stacy, Gwen, now Ned. Do I think I'm somehow immune? I'm going to die. But not yet.
Click.
All right. Now, there is the introduction of Peter Parker Spider-Man into our story. And thank you very much, Beowulf. But I do think Australia won that one.
Bloody hell.
And we lost Beowulf somehow. But
You scared them away, Booster.
you did. You scared him off.
I win
anyway,
by default.
You win by default. All right. Well, now we saw the introduction of Kraven, and Kraven was done, and everyone explained it very well, actually. Thank you guys. And now this little scene that's on here, go back down to the shovelman, the gravedigger, please, Danelli. And this scene keeps showing up throughout this whole comic, all 6 series, and I really love what it's doing, and it's a foreshadowing in 2 separate situations. But I really love this little thing. It's just one panel, but it adds so much to this story. We'll talk about that more later, but that is a very cool idea they had to use this panel. But all right, so we had Kraven introduced, and now we've had Spider-Man introduced. So what do you think is going on in Spider-Man's mind here, Dr. Wright?
I think Spider-Man is confused. At this point in the story, if you follow the story up to this, his actual story and other comics and everything up to this point, then you know that the suit is beginning to take him over, and it's beginning to kind of corrupt him. And so he's coming back to this guy that obviously was killed from something that he did, something that he caused or he had some part in. And so the part of him that is Peter Parker is feeling bad, but without saying it. And that was some of the great writing that they did to set that whole, the whole storyline and later of Venom and everything else is right here, in that he's corrupted and doesn't even know it. And he's fighting and railing against something that he thinks is himself. Think about if your worst enemy was you. That's what you thought every day. It was you. And then one day you found out it wasn't.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a very good point. Thank you for making it. This is right in the middle of what became Venom and the whole symbiote suit. And this is certain. We're seeing the warping of Peter's mind is actually taking place throughout the whole comic book, but it's in a stage of confusion. It's not in the stage which came later. But yeah, it's very. This is very
It
important part.
also, that also, I'm sorry, I
No,
apologize.
no, please.
It also sets Peter up because look at like where he is. He is not in a stage of opulence. He is not in a huge mansion. He's in, kind of a poorer area, it looks like, of New York. An area where, like, the way they tell that to you is really great. The way they say this is a poor area is because the people within it, a business owner within it, can't afford a coffin for a friend.
Mm.
Right?
Even though they are criminals.
So that tells you how poor they really are.
Mm.
And then, I don't know, he does like a stripper thing and pulls money out of his suit.
He does.
That's okay.
Yeah.
And then, but you see, and I think that it wants to show you that Spider-Man is a hero of the people. He's still the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
That's right.
And you can tell there's two distinct voices throughout the thing. Because we are so used to Spider-Man speaking to himself that we don't even recognize that he's actually talking to the suit. Where this is Peter, Joe Face is dead, and here's the suit, which becomes symbiote.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Is he doesn't think it's a suit. He thinks it's him.
Yeah. Why should
exactly.
I care?
Yeah.
And now he's dead. So if you cut it out, this is how Peter's actually saying, Joe Face is dead, and he's now dead. And if they die, and he's fighting, this is really Peter right there. And then it's like, why should I care? Why should I care? Why should I care? And
of course, the normal Spider-Man would never question why he should care. Of course he cares. But
Exactly.
the Venom is already starting to speak to him, and we don't even know Venom exists yet.
Correct.
So this is a very cool comic in that aspect, too. And I know you guys over that are listening who haven't read this, you might think we're overstating this comic. We are not. This comic is incredibly deep. It's incredibly well written. It is full of symbology and iconography of the age and what's going on. This is a truly great comic book series.
And Chester, here's the amazing part. The first part of him talking. Look at the background. It's raining, and there's lightning with a couple of strike. Like there's a crack in his mentality. He's dark, and there's a crack in there.
Well, the suit is always a representation of man, because you look at it like his old suit was red and blue, just basic colors. This is black and white. But what do we think of? We think black, we think darkness, we think shadow. The only light consists of his iconography and his eyes. So the only light he has is the hero he represents and his own vision. Everything else is shadow and darkness.
Yeah. Now, I do have a couple of comments over here from the chat before we move on to Alec. I'm going to come to you in a minute, Alec, and I want you to give us your opinion on the introduction of Spider-Man into this story. But over here, we have James is saying he has this in hardcover. Congratulations. It's a great book. And of course, everyone's just basically making fun of Booster, as they should.
What? I thought my accent was excellent.
Dude, you sounded like you were from New York in like 1905 or something, man.
Close enough.
Close enough.
Would you prefer I go, hey, I'm a New Yorker. Hey, you want to fight about it, huh? Is it?
That he's not Italian either. His name is Peter Parker, and he's not from Jersey, man. But no, I'm just joking. That was cool. All right, Alec. Now, what do you think about this introduction to Peter here?
I look at it as when you've read Kraven's introduction, you've got two themes of death going on there, and two people who are confronting their mortality. Spider-Man, as Dr. Wright was saying, is already confronting his Venom alter ego, and we, the reader, don't even know that yet.
That's right.
And he's questioning his own life, and they're using the death of this individual in the store there as a way for Peter to question his own mortality.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's ever really done that before. He's always thought that, as Spider-Man, I think he's always thought, of course, he could be killed by all these different villains he's faced over the years. But I want to say that I think that this is probably the first time I recall him really questioning his own life when I read the series.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
I think the only other time that calls is that famous scene where he has the building on top of him and he has to escape.
Yes.
That was the
yeah.
Yeah, that was the only other time that I can vividly recall that was him questioning, will he escape? And he overcomes that. And afterwards, I think he makes a milestone that, he'll overcome anything after that because he's confident and he's been succeeding. And now returning to this with the Venom, it's bringing back that that vulnerability where he's starting to say, am I going to die? Because my best friend is dying and I don't care,
Yeah, it's bothering him.
It's just bringing questions into his head. And I love that with the writing that until a few issues later that we don't even recognize that.
Yeah.
And kind of look at the writing like here. Joe's face was scared too. He used to shake when he see me. He used to run just like they're running. But we don't know if this is Peter talking or Venom talking right now, running from someone who doesn't even exist. So, like we're mentioning, this is really a conversation between them two. He's running to and trying to escape, and he doesn't even know what he's running from and where he's trying to escape from.
Yeah, and just to pick on something that Dr. Wright had said, about the stripper moment where he's taking the money out. But I mean, this is a cool thing about Spider-Man as well. I mean, Captain America's, I've never seen him take money out of his pocket and drop it on someone on the street. I mean, this is something. This is Peter Parker, right? I mean, that's what he does, and he's still he's not to the point with the Venom symbiote that he's lost who he is completely yet. So it's interesting. But thank you very much, Alec. Beowulf, why don't you go ahead and tell us what do you think about this introduction to Spider-Man into our story, and then I'll, because you read it, Booster, we'll come to you last. Okay, go ahead, Beowulf.
Yeah, well, so I'm having a bit of technical difficulties over here, guys. I can't open YouTube, but no, I love this. I love this introduction to this story. It literally gives me shivers.
Yeah.
I don't know what you guys have covered or not because I've been dropping in and out, but
no, just go ahead and give your opinion.
Yeah, well, the contrast between Kraven and Spider-Man Peter Parker is beautiful. I think I heard Dr. Wright mention just before I dropped out, like the difference between you have the Hunter in his mansion and then Peter Parker in his poor neighborhood. Yeah, no, as far as I was going to mention before I dropped out, like, not only is Kraven the Last Hunter a great run, you don't have to know anything about Kraven coming into this. It is the perfect introduction to the character. Like if you know a lot about the character before coming in, this just enriches it so much. If you know nothing about him coming in, this is the perfect introduction. It's almost a standalone. It can almost be a standalone. You kind of need to know about Peter and whatnot. It does help to know a little bit about the history, but for the most part, this is a solid story. It's got a beginning, middle, end, and I love it. And the introduction's awesome.
And that does kind of tie into what Mike Barron had said last week when we had him on as a guest on Fanspeak, and he was talking about one of the problems today is that everything is runs. Now, this is a run. True, but you could read this first comic book and not read the rest and still have a good introduction to Kraven. And the fact that the industry today, everything is just these long runs. You can't just pull a comic and jump into something hardly anymore. And it's a problem. And Mr. Barron thought it was a real big problem. That's kind of a unique part of this as well. It absolutely tells you exactly who he is. Thank you very much, Beowulf. Booster, why don't you tell us what you think about your reading and what do you think about Spidey here?
Well, in my professional and unbiased opinion, I thought my reading was absolutely spectacular.
Okay, all right, fine.
And I also found it very interesting to see how Spider-Man is familiar with his own neighborhood. Even the crooks in his neighborhood, to the point where he knows one of them by name. And to see him struggle with himself to think whether or not he cares about someone. He thinks this it's a crook that's dead. Why should I care? But clearly he's familiar enough with this neighborhood to feel something from him that he has to go and pay respects. I really like seeing that in a hero. That's pay respects to the fallen, even an enemy.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, he is Spider-Man. Um,
And of course, seeing one of his enemies die makes him question his own mortality. Because, of course, being young, he probably thinks he's bloody invincible, but this is always a reality check for anyone.
That's true. And of course, there is a little bit of the element as Venom with the Venom is kind of contrasting his mind here. Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, before we move over to the next section of this, just come over here and to the chat. And Primarch Sanguinius says, honestly, would you guys agree with me that outside of Venom, Kraven is the best Spider-Man villain? You got to have a lot of argument on that. I think everyone has their favorites, but I do love Kraven.
I've got a soft spot for Doc Ock, I reckon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They really developed Doc Ock recently with the mentor relationship between Peter Parker and stuff. And those are the best villains, the ones that has a connection to the superhero. And Beowulf, if you can please mute yourself.
Sorry.
Those are the best kind of villains. The ones that have personal connection. Green Goblins and the Hobgoblins, Harry Osborn, Harry Jr. They make the best tragic villains because they're connected, to Peter Parker. And, any connection personally on both sides makes it even deeper. So, the same thing with Kraven. They became personalized through this event. And Venom as well, because, we don't even know that Peter is fighting two fronts.
Yeah, we don't know that yet. That's true.
Yeah. He thinks he's just fighting Kraven, and then he's actually fighting within as well with the suit.
That's true.
And putting back here is like the humanity. The first showing of his humanity, besides the whites, is when he's giving that money, and you actually see flesh and blood underneath, that side that he's, showing his belly, so to speak, to show I'm human, I'm vulnerable. The piece that's Peter Parker, where he literally has to pull off the suit, and then you see the full Peter Parker when he removes everything before he's looking at the spider.
Yep, absolutely. And but to continue with that point, Doctor Doom says my favorite Spider-Man villain is Doctor Doom. He's not biased at all, by the way. So, Doctor Wright, who's your favorite Spidey villain?
Ooh. I kind of liked the Hobgoblin of the McFarlane run. I don't know, but it may have been just because it was like that was one of the first full series I read, so that is something to that. But I think they all have a point. I mean, I think one of the major elements, like we were talking about, some of the storytelling elements that are lacking of today. Professor Geek had a whole expose on that, calling that we're losing storytelling. In the comic books, we're just losing the art of storytelling. Even in books, the art of storytelling is just dead. It's just not there. And so one of the things that used to be that isn't anymore with the kind of postmodern BS that's happening today is that we reflected on humanity, not reality. Like, too many books today focus on reflecting their reality. Because what happens when you reflect reality is you reflect your reality. Well, your reality is private, it's subjective. But humanity is objective. Everyone is human.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that's why the ones that reflect our humanity are the ones that we usually end up being the most immersed with.
Okay.
And this is one of the reasons why Kraven the Last Hunt works so well, because they're reflecting the humanity of Kraven. They're reflecting the humanity of Peter Parker as well. You know, as well as the other character, Vermin, throughout, and also Mary Jane later on. These are reflection of humanity, you know, and what those aspects of humanity means to us.
No, absolutely. And of course the other thing it's really good to mention in this line is that the storytelling and the art here work very well together with on all the different levels they're trying to grab. It's and a lot of times these days you see the storytelling and the art is very disconnected from each other. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but that's something that has bothers me a lot about the this modern comic books that are coming out. And here it's done quite beautifully. Booster, why don't you tell us who's your favorite Spider-Man villain, man?
Oh, absolute favorite. Probably Doc Ock again, or
Yeah,
Venom, Carnage. I like the symbiotes.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Alec? Who's your favorite Spider-Man villain?
I really got to go for the classic Norman Osborn Green Goblin. I remember when I first read uh, the classic issue where he unmasks Peter Parker and Peter's tied to the chair and Goblin's going on his rant. It just really struck me because as a kid, I think that was the first time I had realized that, wow, there's a supervillain who knows the identity of the superhero. What are they going to do now?
That's true. That is a big point of story that they twisted on that, huh? That's true. How about you, Beowulf?
Yeah. I do kind of like the symbiotes, Venom and Carnage. I like Lizard, but honestly, like after reading The Last Hunt, Kraven's, he's growing on me.
Yeah.
From a character I never liked growing up, he's growing on me a lot. So
Oh, I love Kraven. And of course, there's no love in here for Bangle or Mongoose or the Vulture. Unfortunately, you did mention the Lizard. I really love that the thing with the Lizard because it's a very tragic thing. But I love Kraven as an enemy. But for me, of course, later on they brought him back with his daughter Anna resurrected him. But the this run up until this point, I loved Kraven. I love seeing him in the books. But all right, let's move on to our third main character. Now, Kristen Alley has mentioned Mary Jane, and she is in this, and she's not unimportant. She is important for various reasons, which we'll get to in a minute. But we want to move on to the third character, please.